We're joined by Lieutenant General Satish Dua, a former Chief Integrated Defence Staff, and Suhasini Haidar, National Editor and Diplomatic Affairs Editor, The Hindu. Suhasini, I'd like to start with you. Everybody's just waiting to see what sort of shape this new Taliban dispensation will take. Are we being naive when we say that perhaps this Taliban would be different from what it was 20 years ago? Because the sort of statements that are coming out from Doha seem welcome if we try to look at the bright side. What is your view of this?
Well, certainly we will probably not know for some time to come whether in fact this Taliban is different from the one that ruled Afghanistan in 1996. But what does seem to be different is that amongst the international community, there is not as much opposition as to the previous one, because we've already seen countries like China, countries like Russia, of course Pakistan, saying that they are continuing their missions inside Afghanistan. The US and UK have relocated their embassies to the Kabul International Airport, but they have not yet closed them, nor have they announced that they are closing them. So it remains to be seen really how the international community deals with this new Taliban in place. One can see that the Taliban is trying to change the optics of how they are viewed.
Right.
So in the last few hours, we are seeing many pictures of Kabul, business as normal being put out. We see a Taliban spokesperson go to a television studio in Kabul, to the Tolo television studio, and give an interview to a
woman news anchor
over there. This is very different from the past, when the Taliban didn't really allow television, didn't allow images, and certainly would not be seen speaking to a woman with an unveiled face. You see that kind of cosmetic difference. I think they went out of their way to show that the Shia minority was allowed to take out a Muharram procession in Kabul today. But that still has to be tallied with reports from how the Taliban are behaving across the country and what the actual plan is for the government in power, because eventually they have replaced a democratically elected, whatever you might think of that election,
sure,
a democratically elected government of Ashraf Ghani, and they are seeking to put a regime in place. We don't know if it will have any representation of the people in it. Regardless of that, the fact is that the talks are going on in Doha. We understand that former President Karzai and the Chief of the Reconciliation, Dr. Abdullah Abdullah, as well as Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, that 3-member council, are trying to figure out how they are going to have face-to-face talks with the Taliban leadership, because there are still sanctions in place against many of these leaders. Baradar or some of the others may not be able to fly over Iranian airspace and other airspace to get to the Kabul airport. You may see the leaders that are left behind, flying to Doha instead. But it really remains to be seen what kind of a country the regime wants to run after this. When they say that it will be run as an Islamic emirate, or that there will be a Sharia law in it, the question of what kind of restrictions are they thinking about. Certainly the mood amongst a lot of the previous regime, people who were in government or people who have been human rights activists and all, have been very fearful, and they will have to assuage those fears to begin with. I think one of the other steps they took today was to announce an amnesty for all government officials. So if they are making these commitments, the question is, given that the Taliban hasn't really kept many of its promises in the peace process so far, will they keep them? So there's still a long way to go, but I will say that the difference is that this time we are seeing countries like China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan was even previously backing the Taliban, but also the US and UK not saying that they are going to end their diplomatic presence in the country.
All right, we're also joined by Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kak. General Dua, I'd like to come to you next, what Suhasini was talking about, but we've also, right now we're waiting to, with our mission there closed, and as Suhasini was saying that China, Russia, Pakistan, of course, is there, still in contact with Afghanistan. And for India, what are the concerns now?
No, it's, for India, it is without doubt a crisis, both geopolitical and humanitarian, of monumental proportions. And India has been seen to be not so nimble as it should have been. It should have seen the United States legitimizing Taliban through invitation to the Taliban leadership to Camp David in 2019. I'm drawing attention to this factually because we have had nearly 2.5 years to plan for what is now struck us with egg on the face. Now, this is the problem, because if you sort of are in a delusional mode and believe what the Americans are telling you, the Americans have legitimized Taliban over the last 2.5 years. It's not just Camp David. It's
sorry,
the formal...
Sorry to interrupt you there, Air Vice Marshal. We're joined on the phone line by Subhajit Roy, an Indian Express journalist who was just evacuated along with the Indian officials and mission staff from Kabul. Welcome back home, Subhajit, and do tell us about the challenges that were faced. We were told it was very difficult last night and it took a lot of effort to finally get you all to the airport and evacuated.
Yeah, so I mean, because the situation was such, the new Taliban regime was in place and the Indian embassy was trying with them to get all the clearances, approvals. And once they came through, it took a bit of time because the new structures were still not in place. So then once the approvals came through, then the Indian embassy was able to sort of evacuate through this Indian Air Force special aircraft, and that's how the sort of, it was a challenging circumstance because the situation there was not normal. I mean, it was completely different, as we saw, through our reports at the Indian Express, as well as, through visuals from global media. So, yeah, so it was a challenging situation.
No, absolutely. We believe the Taliban was taking a special interest in the Indian embassy. And, while other embassies were being cleared out, the Indian embassy faced a lot more challenges.
Well, you'll have to ask the Indian embassy for that.
All
I
right.
don't know whether they face any special challenges or not. But what I know from the ground, because I was reporting from there for the last 4 or 5 days, that the new structures were not in place in the Taliban regime. And when a new government or a new regime comes in play, then obviously one has to sort of work with new players, new stakeholders. So that was a challenge, I would imagine. But to get the specifics, you'll have to talk to the Indian embassy.
Tell us about what the airport was like, because the images we were seeing, yes, they were absolutely frightening. The Afghans, there's so many desperate people there outside the airport, inside the airport, on the tarmac. It was absolute pandemonium and chaos. There was firing as well. But by the time you reached the airport, what did you see?
Yeah, so Gargi, I was at the airport since morning at the terminal where the chaos was visible. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of people at the airport trying to get in and get any flight to get out of Afghanistan. And so there was absolute chaos and lawlessness at the terminal building. Obviously, the Taliban fighters were trying to control the crowd by aerial firing, by blocking access to the airport, by stationing 5 or 6 armored vehicles. But then the crowd got into the airport after the armored vehicles were removed, and but still there were firing going on, and sometimes there were aerial firing. Then there were several points where and at least I faced in a situation where there was indiscriminate firing to some extent. So so it was a sort of a frightening situation at that point of time. So the Indian embassy, the Indian flight took off from the technical area of the airport, which is controlled by the U.S. And from there systems were in place. There was no chaos, and things were orderly. So from there, we managed to get out from that particular area of the airport, which is under the control of the American forces.
Right, and finally, what was the mood, in a sense, inside the aircraft? There must have been absolute relief.
Yeah, you can imagine people were waiting to board this flight for at least a day, if not more. And so there was a genuine sense of relief because friends, family, everyone in India, I guess, was concerned about the safety and security of their loved ones, the citizens. So, obviously there was sort of cheer and, after once the flight took off, it was like from the film Argo, once once the flight took off, there was sort of cheer at the aircraft. Yeah.
All right, well, great to have you back, and I can just imagine the relief among your family and friends as well. Thank you so much for speaking to us here at NDTV.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, General Dua, sorry for keeping you waiting so long. Your comments on, I spoke to you yesterday and now today, seeing the development so far. Suhasini was saying, that the Taliban trying to get the optics right, but we'll really have to wait and see how the situation there unfolds, what sort of dispensation comes into place.
True. Like I said yesterday, I will talk of what is the heartening sign. The heartening sign is, despite the visuals that we are seeing at the airport, despite the fact the way the gentleman who spoke just now, who's been evacuated from there, he also spoke about what's happening at the airport. There's a lot of chaos. There's been firing. There have been deaths. But in Kabul itself, apart from chaos and traffic jams, there is no mayhem and looting. There is no bloodshed on the streets. So to that extent, I think it's a good sign that the Taliban has got a better control over themselves, a better control of the city. And like Suhasini said, the optics are right. This time round, compared to what happened last time, what they did is they actually went and at the lower level of leadership, they made struck deals. Translated, that means gave up money to the lower levels at the in the Afghan army as also. So there was no fight at district level, at provincial levels. They have appointed a spokesperson, like you mentioned. There's a woman announcer, a lady announcer there, and their spokesperson is available to any news channels like yours or BBC. So they are putting out the correct optics for the moment. But that that doesn't take anything away from the fact that the larger picture, it will emerge as to how they decide how is their domestic dispensation going to be, because otherwise all the other countries will be duty bound to take some action. We also have to watch, the last thing I'd like to say, we have to watch very closely as to what is there, how do they deal with, or what is the relationship that going forward with Russia, with China. We are aware of what their relationship with Pakistan is, though it is also going to be a little rocky and turbulent and not so smooth. But that is the dynamics that India needs to wait and watch. Now that we've gotten our mission staff and our personnel, at least the embassy personnel, out, I think the next thing, we will have to wait and watch as to how we play a role in this dynamic.